I just finished up making this panel, but before gluing it in, we still need to make the outlet and the switch panels, and also lots of electrical stuff. So that's going to be this week's episode of my tiny adventure van build. But now let's get out of here, because the farmers just started spraying cow dung all over this field. So here's what we're working with. In this cutout over here, we're gonna have the 2 outlets. Then in the top, we're gonna have some vent holes and also 3 of these dimmers. And then the main switch panel will have some of these toggle switches, the inverter control, and also a battery monitor. First, let's grab some of this scrap wood and cut out the rough shape of the panels. So I made this corner template to get most of the material off, but I think it isn't too surprising that they don't fit yet. So that's going to require a ton of sanding. But first I thought it's pretty interesting looking at the difference between those 2 panels. They are from 2 different hardware stores, and the one on the left was even cheaper. You can really see the difference on the top layer. And also there's so many defects in this one. So for all the Swiss and German viewers, the good one was from Hornbach and the bad one from Obi. So yeah, choose wisely, I'd say. A couple hours of sanding later, and we got the 3 panels fitting pretty well. There still are some minor adjustments, but I'm gonna do them in the end. Now I want to start off with the socket panel. That's also gonna be the reason why I went for 15 instead of 12 millimeters here, because in the end I don't want them to stick out at all. So with the thinner plywood, there wouldn't have been much left. And you can see this is already gonna be quite a close call. But let's get this in. Now, aside from 2 screws that are gonna hold the panel in place, the first one is done. Now, before continuing with this panel, I quickly wanna grab some pieces of leftover birch ply and get a glue up going. Now onto this panel, I already marked up the layout where the monitors and the 4 switches are gonna go. So let's get cutting. I really like these toggle switches, and the reason I went for this one over here is because that's gonna power the air compressor, and it for sure wake me up if I accidentally bump the switch during the night. I do think I'd prefer having 4 of those though, so I'm thinking about just getting 2 more, but let me know in the comments what you would do. Now on to the most interesting part, where we're gonna work on those dimmers, and in the last episode I took apart the dimmer housings. Now those 3 fit nicely together, but I don't like the included plastic knob, so that's why we glued up this thing, and I'm gonna be trying to use the hole saw to drill out 3 knobs, which we can then glue on these little dimmers. Now that didn't go quite as planned, and the little plug broke off in one of the layers of the plywood. Now luckily I found this 25mm beech rod in the basement, so I think that's gonna work just fine too. So I've got the 3 holes for the little dimmers and then also for ventilation up here. And I'm really happy with the snug fit and the little shadow groove around the knob. Now this little panel is gonna go up here, but instead of mounting the circuit boards on the back of the panel, I want them on the walls, so then cable management gets much easier. Problem is this wall isn't straight, so first we're gonna make a little PCB holder out of some framing offcuts and aluminum, so we've got a little heatsink, and then we can glue all of it in here. Got all the measurements, and I think this failed glue up might even work as little feet, but we'll see about that. Now you might have asked yourself why I put a conductive metal backing on a plate where I'm gonna put some PCBs, and yeah, there's no good reason. So I glued on 2 little strips of wood, and that will get the metal contacts far enough from the aluminum. So after gluing this in, I now have to precisely align 3 of those dimmers, and it's not gonna be too easy because it has to be more than millimeter perfect, otherwise the knobs aren't gonna fit through the panel in the end. So I made this little trick for finding the centers of these rods, and then I'm planning on temporarily fixing the wall again with the little knobs in place, holding the PCBs in the back. For fixing the panels to the wall, I was thinking on using these threaded inserts and some small bolts, but the problem is the lip is barely wide enough. I only got one to fit nice and the others just tore out. So luckily I also got some magnets. So I think I'm just gonna cut some plywood tabs and then glue them on the panels and also the walls. And then hopefully the magnets are gonna be strong enough to hold everything in place while driving around. But I think it might work just fine, and also we don't get any visible screws, so that's a plus. Little magnet counterparts are on and drying up. So now it's finally time to get back to the electrical stuff. And I loaded up the van with pretty much all the materials and tools we might need to get this electrical cabinet looking nice and tidy. Now first up, we gotta route the inputs for the 3 dimmer switches from the fuse box down here, before we can then hook up the outputs, which means the lights up top, the LED strips on the sides, and then also the trunk lights. So for the LED strips, I'm gonna go with a 15 amp circuit and then 2 3 amps for the spotlights. And we're gonna pop those in on this side over here. Then let's get some 2.5 and 4 millimeter cable and get it all hooked up. So the input cables are installed, and I used some cable clips to keep everything nice and tidy. Now I gotta hook up the outputs for the dimmers, and for that I'm gonna start with the trunk and ceiling lights. That's already looking much better. Now the middle dimmer is going to be the most complicated one because we have a ton of inputs. This is from the wall over here, and then we have lights here, also in the shelf, under here, and then on this side. So we got to tie all these loose ends together and then connect them up into here. Now let's see if everything still works. So that should be the ceiling light. And it works. And then the wall. And the trunk works too. Now onto the last piece, we're just gonna go over here. Now this panel still needs 4 magnets, and then we're gonna drill a couple dozen ventilation holes. Now besides all that woodworking, continued working on the electrical and got 4 more circuits in. 2 are going to be for the switches of the ceiling fans, and then 2 really low amp ones. One has switch for the relay over here, and the other one's going to be the signal for the air horn. Then I put in a bunch of these clips just to kind of organize everything. It's still a little bit of a mess down here, but up here it's looking nice and tidy. And we're almost ready to install the switch panel, which I finished setting up. So now it's time for some paint. Now that took ages sanding and painting everything, but the big wall is finally done and ready to be glued in a few hours. And also the little panels got their second coat, and the finish on those is just super cool. Now I did get another package we need for the install, so let's see what's in here. Got another set of little stainless bolts for the inverter monitor. And then I finally decided I wanted to go with the on and off switches without the little cover. So everything looks nice and uniform. So now I want to assemble everything and then finally glue in the piece.